Welcome back to Stop Feeling Like Shit. And I'm your host, Daniela Korth with Dr. Buzz. And welcome back, Dr. Joe Gambardella, my favorite person besides Dr. Buzz. Hi, Joe.
Hi.
Hey there.
All right. So today we're going to be breaking down the real root causes of brain aging. Think gut inflammation, oxidative stress, insulin resistance, and high cortisol. I mean, I've had all of those, right? Haven't you?
Mhm.
And we're going to take a deep dive into really what is behind that. How do we heal it? What do we do? The if and what and buts and all the good things. So let's just jump right into it. Ready?
Well,
All right, let's go. All right, so let's just talk about it. I mean, I had brain fog really, really, really bad. I think like, what, a year ago, maybe? I couldn't remember anything whatsoever. I was literally be talking to someone and I'd actually have to take notes. And it was pretty scary, really, because you start thinking about people that have, you know, issues remembering things. And I thought, oh my God, am I getting Alzheimer's? Like, what's going on here? And it sucked. So let's just walk people through because a lot of people do have brain fog.
yeah.
So, you guys want to talk about brain fog, what that is and why?
I think there's multiple causes of brain fog. And we always talk about the four horsemen, which would be catabolic physiology, inflammation, insulin resistance, and mitochondrial dysfunction, and oxidative stress, I should say. And it could be any one of those things or a combination of those things that cause this. And that's why it's really important. People always say, "Well, what blood test can I get to diagnose this or see what's going on?" And I always tell people, blood test is kind of like the check engine light on your car. So if your check engine light goes on in your car, it's usually too late, number one, right? So, and
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't tell you what's wrong. It just tells you, hey, there's something major going on. That's when it goes off. But it doesn't point you in the right direction. That's why when you go to the mechanic, he has his computer, he plugs it in, then he'll say, it's your thermostat or it's, this coil wire or whatever's wrong. And that's what the further testing that we do in our offices is able to really find the root cause of these things because the blood work's really not going to show you anything until it's almost to the point where it's a super problem.
Mm-hmm.
So, and usually with what I've seen, I'm not sure if you agree, Joe. People that have brain fog, they usually doesn't show up on blood test, right? So a lot of people just chalk it up as, well, I'm just getting older. I have a lot on my mind, and they have this fear when we do these tests. If someone's got a real high cortisol level, if they have mitochondrial dysfunction, like serious, gut infections. And the one thing that's interesting, when I say gut, a lot of people say, well, my gut's fine. 80% of people that have gut issues have no symptoms of gut.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're sitting there and say, well, my gut doesn't hurt, or, I go to the bathroom, like, that doesn't mean anything because people live their whole lives with these infections and they don't know it. And this leads to leaky gut, which leads to systemic inflammation, which leads to brain fog and leads to, and lots of other problems too.
Right.
And that, you know, I we've had that was really one of the most common complaints we've had in the last couple of years that people have been reaching for words. They could see, they could in their mind the words are there, but it doesn't make it to the tongue. So it's computing or getting the words out, just forgetting things as soon as unless you write them down. These are like common symptoms of brain fog, not being able to remember what you did yesterday. And it's really, like you said, Danielle, really scary. And for a younger person, you don't automatically think that it's some sort of cognitive decline. And unless you have some functional medicine lab testing, it's really hard to put a finger on, okay, that's what caused it. It's usually related to some hidden stressor, like Buzz, like you said, right? So the ways that stress affects the body are pretty profound. You have the stressors that you are aware of, your work stuff, your car is not working, you got to change a tire. But those hidden infections, the sensitivities to food, all can produce the exact same symptoms along different pathways. If you only had an adrenal stress test, for example, and the purpose of doing that test is to really record the damage that stress has on your body because cortisol is a stress hormone. And if you think about what cortisol is, it's a glucocorticosteroid. Cortisol elevates to raise blood sugar, insulin is active to lower blood sugar. But if you go into a fight or flight state, your body is exposed to some traumatic stress, maybe an infection in the gut, like you said, and cortisol spikes and you have inflammation. Inflammation affects neurotransmitters. So you may have too much dopamine in the brain, not enough dopamine in the brain. And that's one of the hallmark symptoms of brain fog. And how do you deal with that? Do you just wait for it to pass? Well, a lot of people have waited for it to pass and it's still not any better. And at the same time, they're developing other subsequent symptoms like their metabolism is affected, they're not sleeping well. And that's one of the big drivers of it is a disrupted sleep cycle. So there's lots of ways to fix it, and we could even talk through that. But I think on each one of these tests, as you've mentioned before, there are hallmark indicators that point to brain fog that are easily addressed and really easily fixed.
Yeah, and I think along those lines too, something we've seen a bunch of too, Joe, is people that have either been vaccinated or have had COVID. One of the things that virus really affects is mitochondrial function.
Mhm.
So and gut dysbiosis. So anyone who suffers with long COVID, the first thing we do is test gut and test adrenal function because you're going to find something going on, or organic acid testing, because we always find gut dysbiosis or some issue with mitochondrial dysfunction in those people. So, and that damage is, it's reversible if you treat it, but if you wait for it to go away, it never fixes itself and usually gets worse with time.
Yeah, yeah, agreed.
And what would you say, like, if people, you know, so for example, I think that if I wasn't in the position that I was in, right, didn't have these things, like at my fingertips, right? Because most people don't know that there's other testing out there. They don't know, like they go to their family doctor and they're like, but my family doctor did blood work. We already went over this blood work doesn't show brain fog, right? But you know that you have the brain fog. Okay. And what happens, you know, I know that if I didn't do those tests and we weren't doing all the things that we were doing, I would probably just let it sit there and be like, okay, I know it's going to go away sometime. It's going to go away. It's going to go away. And some of these people have been suffering with brain fog for years now because of COVID, for sure. And I know that still people have been saying they still have brain fog. So it's like, talk about what all the inflammation in the brain eventually what ends up happening.
Well, I think one of the things you could even start with for people that haven't done these tests, if you look at standard blood work, what are some of the markers that would point you in the direction that there is some sort of mitochondrial dysfunction or some sort of dysbiosis, meaning an overgrowth of bad bacteria in the gut or not enough healthy bacteria to pull nutrients into the bloodstream? One of the markers that I always look for is any type of an anemia. So the size, the shape of the red blood cells, if you can't carry enough oxygen to the brain. That's one of the sources of brain fog. I often see low ferritin. So when I think low ferritin, not enough iron moving around the body, iron's carrying oxygen. That's a source. Very low levels of vitamin D. If vitamin D is low, the brain needs a ton of vitamin D. You can have symptoms of brain fog. But as far as the labs that we look at and some of the other markers, Daniela, you had said, what exactly did you ask? You were saying beyond the labs, what was
And the
the
blood work, like CRP is another good one. We look in blood work, right?
yeah, CRP, the anemias, and even inflammatory markers like homocysteine, right? If homocysteine is elevated, you have inflammation of the blood-brain barrier, and that can affect the amount of neurotransmitters in the brain. Those are some of the markers that we would look at on traditional labs, but that should just be the foot in the pond to say, okay, now what else? Because how are they going to manage that? If you have high homocysteine, if the levels are not above 14.9, what are they going to do to clinically manage that? Right? Because that's a cardiovascular inflammatory marker. They don't typically associate that with inflammation of the blood-brain barrier. In functional medicine, that's one of our big hallmarks that we look for. If ferritin is low, they'll usually give you some sort of iron supplementation. But really, what is that doing? There's hidden sources. Is there an ulcer? Do you have an infection in the stomach that's affecting your ability to digest proteins and turn those into hormones that your body needs to produce neurotransmitters? So I think the first thing that everybody should know is there are 3 functional medicine lab tests that we utilize to really get a handle on people with these common complaints of, and brain fog is just one of them, but we always talk about our big 5, which is people struggling with weight, They have no energy throughout the course of the day, despite doing everything to give them tons of energy, including drinking a bunch of caffeine and working out and trying to sleep well. There's some level of inflammation in the brain. So that's brain fog, it's anxiety, ADD, ADHD, OCD, any of those three-letter words. There's some gut issue that they're concerned about, whether it's even just bloating or distension in from the belly button to the hips. They try everything, but they can't seem to get a body contour that suits them. And then the hormones are not balanced. You're looking at traditional lab markers. And remember, most doctors are looking at hormone imbalance if they even run the test, just to see if there's a marker that's outside the low or the high. We
Mm.
always speak about the supraphysiological or the clinically low, but we want to be optimized. It doesn't mean you're 1 or 2 points above being in range or 2 or 3 points being out of range. It has to be somewhere near the middle to higher points for your body to function properly. So, we look at those markers, and the best way to tell if your hormones are being affected by stress is to run the adrenal stress panel. And that kind of leads into the others. I don't know what you
Yeah.
find, Buzz. That's always the one that, kind of opens the door to if cortisol is high or not regulated, you suppress the immune system, the gut becomes involved because those antibodies that protect the gut and prevent the bad bacteria from overgrowing and keep the good bacteria in a healthy state, they get wiped out. And then your brain is essentially starving. Without the ability to digest food properly, the brain can't get what it needs to either make hormones or make brain-derived neurotropic factor to regulate mood and improve cognition and memory.
Yeah, and these tests are very simple too. It's a saliva test. Basically, you spit into a vial 4 times during the day, and we're really looking for, what is your cortisol levels and what is your rhythm because your rhythm, your circadian rhythm is very important. If you're and you really want, and to wake up in the morning, cortisol levels a little bit elevated, and you want it sloping down during the day. And quite often we'll find people where that rhythm's just really messed up. They'll wake up and the cortisol's low, so they're dead tired when they wake up, and then it's amped up before they go to bed, and then they don't sleep well at nighttime. So it's just totally messed up. And people don't understand if whenever cortisol is high, which is catabolic in nature, your anabolic hormones, you get this thing called pregnenolone steal. So instead of your body making testosterone and estrogen, which males and females both produce, which you need to be healthy and anabolic and to rebuild tissue, cortisol steals from that, so you don't have adequate testosterone and estrogen. And we have a lot of people that will come into the clinic because we do a lot of bioidentical hormones, and you'll have, teenagers come in and 20-year-olds come in and we'll do their hormone panel and they'll have really low testosterone. So, the only thing that can cause that is cortisol, right? So, in improper adrenal function.
Yeah.
So, but a lot of kids are up all night playing video games or, a lot of people that work like, night shift jobs, that can wreak havoc on it. Um, and the cool thing is you can fix all this with nutrition and supplementation. But if you
Mhm.
don't, like you're just setting yourself up for a life of problems because when that cortisol is high, you're catabolic. It's hard on the muscles, the joints, the blood vessels, everything, brain tissue.
Mhm.
It's very important to have that thing regulated properly.
I can't tell you how many times I've had a patient come in and said, "Oh, I had my cortisol checked," and it's one of the markers. Sometimes it's included in a traditional lab work, and they usually test cortisol in the morning, and it's just 1 point. When you look at the cortisol, like you said, Buzz, you have to look at is the rhythm right? Or is the body producing enough or too little? And also what's happening over the course of the night. So this is another big one that leads to brain fog is if the rhythm is wrong, meaning you're not producing the most cortisol in the morning to get sugar to the brain and wake the body up. We'll see sometimes people have a low cortisol in the morning and then it actually spikes before they go to bed. And the symptoms of that is, you struggle to fall asleep, you toss and turn, sometimes you can't sleep. But essentially, what's happening is the body's running the equivalent of a marathon throughout the course of the night. And you're in a fight or flight state, or at least your body thinks that. And you wake up and you're dragging. So if you have those symptoms where you wake up and you feel like you need coffee, you never feel rested, chances are it's the cortisol rhythm. And unless you map it or until you map it, there's really not any easy way around that. And I'm sure most people have tried. Is it sleep apnea? Are they taking, sleeping aids to kind of mimic that the body's getting sleep, but essentially, it's just masking another symptom. It's the same as if you have pain and you take a painkiller. Are you really fixing the problem? So when you can regulate the cortisol rhythm and regulate blood sugar and give vitamin C to control the inflammation that goes along with that, people start to feel better really, really quickly. I would say within the first 2 to 3 weeks, people feel remarkably better when
Yep,
it
I
comes to,
agree with that.
yeah.
Agree with that.
Yeah, and I feel like some people too. So some people they like, you know what? Maybe we don't need tests. We'll just go out and we'll just buy some brain supplements and start taking those. But, sometimes you don't need all those supplements. You just need what you need,
Mhm.
right?
But they always say if vitamins can be very good for you, but if you're taking vitamins you don't need, they can be bad.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it's important to do these tests to see, specifically, because obviously everyone's different biomechanically or biochemically. And the same supplements I take aren't going to be the same ones that you take or Dr. Joe's going to take. So that's what this testing comes in, and it tells you specifically what your cells need to function properly.
Mm-hmm.
And usually, once you get corrected, it's not a lot of supplements, and depending on, sometimes in the beginning, it can be a little bit supplement heavy, depending on if you're really messed up or not. But, once you're dialed in, like you don't need a bunch of vitamins.
Right.
Yeah, they're supplement to a healthy lifestyle. That's it. It's not that they're not permanent. But when the body's the weakest in the beginning, you really weigh heavily on the supplements as your sleep cycle improves, as your exercise routine improves. But yeah, it's a really strong point that you make that we learned as we were going through these functional medicine fellowships, Buzz. Like one of the first things they told us was that there were brilliant doctors that are no longer with us that were functional medicine doctors themselves, and they would treat themselves. One doctor in particular would get just terrible, terrible stomach pain and cramping, and he would give himself digestive enzymes, and he felt better. And weeks and months and years went by until he was finally diagnosed with stomach cancer, an ulcer that turned into stomach cancer. So the same way that you wouldn't, take a medication without having the proper testing and need for it, the supplements are the same thing. I think it's now that you have the resources available to you in some countries beyond the United States, there are supplements that we have here that are actually medications in other states, in other countries, I should say, excuse me. So doesn't it make sense to have precision nutrition for your deficiency? Everybody should really have their own separate blueprint for their condition. And
Mm.
like we said, that's really what biohacking is, if you want to call that, or blueprinting. It's just finding out what your physiology is deficient in, supplementing it to optimize your function.
Okay.
Yeah. Another thing we've had pretty good success with, Joe, and I always tell people with neurodegeneration, if you have real neurodegeneration, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's disease, um, it's really hard to reverse the damage, but we've had great success stopping it, or at least severely slowing the progression. But if you have someone that has severe Alzheimer's and they don't remember anything, those people, typically they're not going to come back. That's why it's very important when you start having these symptoms of, Parkinson's disease or Alzheimer's, to get the testing done and get ahead of it. Because if you get ahead of it and get the inflammation down and get the mitochondria functioning properly, remove oxidative stress if that's the problem, I've seen these cases they do extremely, extremely well. And unfortunately, traditional medicine really doesn't have any solutions for that. So if you've been diagnosed with Alzheimer's or Parkinson's disease, and you ask your doctor, is there a way to stop this or slow the progression? They say, no, you got to find a new doc because we've had really good success treating these cases, especially when we catch them early on.
I always say that inflammation is like stress, the silent killer, really. I mean, I always tell people all the time when they start talking about things, I'm always like, well, you have inflammation in the body. Like you're full of inflammation. And they're like, well, really? I don't know. Like, I don't feel like it. They're like looking at themselves. And I'm just like, yeah, that's what it sounds like to me. You're full of inflammation. I don't think people understand that it's really a silent killer. But if you
Yeah.
think about it, look at the way that we live. You know, we are the way that we are in today's age. Everyone is like working all the time. They're stressed out with family things. Um, I mean, just it doesn't matter. It's all these toxins and chemicals in our environment and the stuff that we're eating, like every little thing, it's like you're full of inflammation.
Mhm.
So that's why I mean, the tests are truly amazing. And when I had that bad brain fog, I'd have done anything at that moment in my life not to have that anymore because I couldn't remember anything at all. It was scary. And I just thought,
You had high
God,
levels of stress at that time.
yeah, I had high levels of stress. And I thought, what am I going to do? Because I was willing to do anything. But the test, once you take those and you see how jacked up your cortisol levels are, I mean, and you were saying, Joe, like, okay, it's, you can't wake up in the morning. Well, I couldn't get up in the morning, my sleeping pattern was all jacked up. I was having night sweats. I was going through all these things on top of the brain fog. And it is just like, wow. So I really am a big fan of the test, and I'm a big fan of functional medicine in general because it works. It really works.
Yeah, my own story. I've had shoulder pain and hip pain for years. And, I would treat it, we have all the tools in the clinic, laser, shockwave, I do stem cell injections, and they would help for a while, but the same injury would always come back. Since I fixed my cortisol levels, like this is the first time literally since probably like high school I haven't had shoulder pain when I work out,
That's
which is
great.
crazy. Like I've
Yeah.
had, shoulder pain my whole life. And the same thing with hip pain, like, just like, like working out squatting. I always would have a little bit of pain in my hip. And since my cortisol levels are fixed now or more regulated, like I literally have no pain in my hip or shoulder, which is crazy because that's something I had for 30 years.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy when you think about it. It's like that's, you're always wondering, like, is there something like going on in there? Like, should I get it looked at, x-rayed, MRI'd? And then you fix your cortisol levels and you're like, oh, there's no more pain. It's just crazy.
Yep.
That's how it works so well with the regenerative medicine practices and orthopedic practices, chiropractic, because we have such great success with the tools, but like you said, there's always in some patients, there's always that little bit left. And we never really associate high cortisol. But like you said, cortisol, when it's high, there's inflammation. That's joint pain, that's hip pain, knee pain, shoulder pain. And it's so common. When you combine that with the stem cell therapies or exosomes or any of these different protein type therapies, you're really scaling your results into the 80, 90, 95%, near 100% success rate when you have the right type of patient and you've done the right type of diagnostics. So anybody that's really in that space, we teach it now as part of our curriculum that it's just as important to have an MRI on a joint, an X-ray on a joint that you're going to be treating, to be using the right product enough time so that the patient could fully recover, but also setting up the patient for success by, I won't say I make it mandatory, but I lay it out in front of every single patient that if you really want to have great outcomes, this needs to be part of your curriculum. You have to have the blood work, the adrenal, the GI mapping, the metabolomics, organic acid testing, and sometimes even these gene snippets, these gene mutations that become active when you're under chronic stress, that stop you from getting the right amount of B vitamins to different parts of the body will hold you back in terms of pain. And you think about it, it's the least expensive way to fix your body
Mhm.
because regenerative medicine, although it's affordable, it's still an investment that you're making in yourself. But functional medicine, very, very low cost to get these tests done. Sometimes some of the testing, the genetic ones, you're only doing once in your life. If you have a gene mutation or an active gene, you don't have to test for it over and over again. If it's there, it's there. So
Even
easy.
your adrenal test and your gut test, once you get those things corrected, the only thing I think you really justify is probably, organic acid test. I think someone should do once a year because you do change over time. But what that allows you to do is have a customized nutrition and supplement program for the rest of your life. And as you age and as your metabolism changes, maybe you need more CoQ10 and you need less B vitamins, or that's being oversimplified, but that test tells you how your body and how your cells are working.
Yep.
So it's a pretty amazing test.
And you can get it. I mean, wouldn't it be amazing if someone would come to your house and do your blood work, 3 times a year? These tests, there's no excuse that it can't fit into the schedule because they'll drop ship the tests right to your house. You
Yep.
perform all of them in the comfort of your own home. They'll pick the tests up from you, or you drop them off at a FedEx or UPS. They're back at the lab in 2 weeks, and then in 3 weeks, we're having a conversation that changes people's lives. And they're losing weight, and they're getting pregnant, and they're having more energy. There's so many different things that got all these years into practice. I'm having the most fun. I know we talk about it all the time. This is the most fun I've had in practice in 25 years.
Yeah, I agree.
It's crazy.
It's really just getting the root cause, figuring out what the root cause is.
Yeah. No, I love Buzz will be talking to patients and we'll be figuring out like really they're jacked up. I mean, people are jacked up these days. I mean, they're
Mhm.
super ill and they don't even know. I mean, they think it's normal. That's what's so hard for me, I think, is I'm on TikTok and I've been watching all these people on TikTok and what they go through. And
Mhm.
I'll sit there and be watching them, and half of them, their hair's falling out, or they have no energy at all. They're super fatigued. Um, they're just chronically ill. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, you all need functional medicine. You really,
Mhm.
all you need is functional medicine. And once you start, I mean, for some of these people, they feel like shit so bad that just in a couple weeks, it's like night and day, I feel like. And we've had people like that. It's been like night and day sometimes for people, but they normalize feeling so bad now. And also, I hate when people also, they'll say, I like being stressed out and I love being under stress. And it's like, you you think you do, right? Because you think you are more proactive and you work better and things like that. I used to be that way, where it's like, okay, I work better if I'm under pressure and I'm stressed out of my head, right? But really, your body, when that is happening, now I understand the way that stress works with inflammation in the body. And that was never really good for me. And I think working in title for 13 plus years, and that's how I operated for 13 plus years, was being like a workhorse, stressed out of my head. And I was always just go, go, go. And then finally it catches up to you. And there's little things along the way where your body's telling you, but I think that for the most part, people ignore those signs and symptoms because we just do. Um, but eventually it catches up to you. And then I always tell people, you spent the last 10 plus years jacking yourself up. And now we're just asking you to give us like a good solid 6 months to a year to help you bounce back. And that's not asking for much,
Mhm.
really. So, yeah. Oh, man. Anything else you want to share?
No, I just think if you're listening to this and you have brain fog or just like aches and pains everywhere, there's a reason for that, and age
Hmm.
is not the reason.
Right.
You could, my mom,
Yeah.
I mean,
She's
she's,
she'll be 80.
yeah. And Joe, how old's your mom?
Mom's 92.
Yeah. I mean, and if you meet these women, like they're better than most 40-year-olds, right?
Yeah.
But they've done the testing. They take the supplements. I make my
Yeah.
mom her shake every day, and she wears the NAD patches. Um, but that's because what showed up on her test, though, obviously. So, but if you just maintain your body, just kind of like you maintain your car, you can have. We have that '67 Camaro that thing's in new shape. We put a lot of work into it,
Yeah.
and it takes a little more maintenance. But if you maintain your body, there's no reason you can't be your optimal into your 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I always tell people, I mean,
and don't wait till it's too late.
yeah, I want to live a good life. Like I want to be optimal. I want to live my best life. I'm 37 years old, which I'm like freaking out because I'm like, oh my God, I'm almost 40. And I'm like, and I look at myself in the mirror and I'm like, but I look so good and I feel so good. And the
Yeah.
reason why I feel so good and I look so good is because one, like we have this testing, two, we take the right supplements, and we're doing what our body needs, the right nutrition, the right sleep. I'm a huge believer in like sunlight. Like we need sunlight. And so I do all those things because I want to, when I'm 40, out here still looking like I'm 20, and I want to live my best life. And we want that for people.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So yeah,
No reason to suffer, have
no,
pain, to feel, to be dragging. There's always a solution.
you're not too old. I hate that when people say, I'm just old, I'm aging.
And
No, quit it.
if you give your body what it needs, it will always heal if you're
Yeah,
alive. But that's kind of the
true.
premise of regenerative medicine and functional medicine. So when someone comes to one of our offices and they have a problem, they have chronic back pain, lack of energy, instead of treating the symptom, we look at, well, what's the cause,
Hmm.
and let's fix the root cause. And that, and,
And
that,
some,
and if you assist the body with the root cause, it always gets better.
yeah. And some of the action steps people could take in the meantime while they're ordering their tests, most people that have brain fog ultimately are toxic heavy, so they could just start drinking more, getting better hydration. The good rule of thumb is drink half your body weight in ounces of water. So, you got to drink more. And then we call them the big eight things that we want to avoid. So if you decrease dairy in some people, they get better. If you decrease gluten in some people, they get better. A lot of people get better. Corn, soy, sugar. People are taking way too much caffeine, alcohol, and then the inflammatory seed oils. So you don't have to be perfect and go across the board and eliminate everything all at once. But if you just started drinking a bit more and learning what gluten is and maybe reducing some of that in the body, I think people are going to see some big changes in the short term while they're waiting for those labs to come back.
And we, just to throw this out there, we have a friend who loves food, and when he eats gluten and sugar, he turns manic, like just wild, you know? And then he'll go and he'll do a fast, and it's like a totally different person. So,
You can actually call him on the phone and talk to him, and I know within a minute whether he's eating bad that day or not.
yeah,
Craziest thing.
it's the craziest stuff. So it's like if you eat gluten and sugar, I mean, all the time, like you really should take a deep dive into that because it's literally rotting the brain, right? Yeah. So, anyways, I think if you have brain fog, this is a good episode for you. And if you don't have brain fog, it's still good for you because a lot of people have inflammation in the body in general. A lot of us have sleeping issues. Most of us don't sleep that much or can't wake up, or we have lack of energy. We have, we're bloated all the time. We normalize those things and those aren't normal. But if you are listening to this and your provider, and Dr. Joe said they're now training providers on how to do functional medicine, right? And I think that's huge for practices. It's huge for providing better patient care to your patient. So I love that. All right. So, Dr. Joe, tell us how those providers can get in touch with you.
We have a website. It's called Regenerative Medical Academy, regenerativemedicalacademy.com, and they can go and look under the courses. And there's a coursework if you want to learn how to scale your business with regenerative medicine and have better outcomes with shoulders, knees, hips, and backs. And then there's our whole functional medicine section if you want to have an in-service and learn, okay, what are the most common tests that you're going to order for what conditions? What are basic protocols to help people who are struggling with weight, they're fatigued, they have low energy, digestive problems, and hormone balancing. If you want to learn it in a weekend, you're not going to be an expert, but at least to be able to help your patients when they come in and get them on the right type of a protocol to help most people, there's a great course for you there as well.
Love that. And then if you are someone that's listening and you want to know where Dr. Joe is, functional medicine actually, you don't have to be in Miami. You don't have to be in Florida, right? Just like you don't have to be in Ohio to do functional medicine. That can be done via telemedicine, which is really cool. So if you want to work with Dr. Joe, you can just find him. He's in Miami, Florida, and Jupiter, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
cool.
Yes.
All right. Is there anything else you want to share?
No.
All right. Well,
Thanks, Joe.
Dr. Joe, it's been a pleasure. As always, we love you so much. Thank you for being on today. And I know we'll be seeing you around soon.
Love you too, guys. We'll
See
see
you,
you
Joe.
soon.